Okay, I think that started it. I will try my best Mache impersonation. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Today is November 11th, 2020, and thank you for joining us for the SIG CLI bug scrub. Today we're going to be focusing on customize, and Jeff is actually going to be driving for the first part here. So I made you a co-host, Jeff, and I'll let you take it away if you'd like.
All right, let me try to share my screen here. Is that working out? Do you see some issues?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, so I thought I'd lead off with the one that might or might not consume the most time and discussion, this notion of enabling globbing in the resources field of the customization file. And this is a great, well-written issue. It talks about the pluses and one of the many of the reasons why one might add globbing. So some background on this. For the longest time, Kustomize has gone with this notion that you should have an explicit manifest, an explicit list of the things that you want to include in your customized build as part of the whole declaring what you're doing, and as part of trying to be as transparent as possible as to what goes into the build. So all you have to do is consult the customization file. Now, in a Git context, that may not be as important. In a Git context, if your customization file is sitting in a repo and it's checksummed and so on, you could have globbing happen, or you could even have just say you drop the resources field, and that's taken as a signal to take all the YAML insight into account in your build. Now, it's easy to understand globbing. Technical problems arise, though, because when you run the build, you have lots of files that you may look at that aren't full resource files that you would not want to include explicitly in your build. A common example would be a patch. So you've got a patch that you would like to apply to some of the resource. And then there's things we can't anticipate, like a custom plugin or KRM function that gets written that has some sort of file in it. And if you wildcard that into the resource list, it's going to be a mistake. So the question is, when do you want to catch that mistake? If you're going to catch it at build time, then that could be a problem for you. Whereas if you run customize, edit, add resources, and then some sort of glob, what that does is walk your tree, adds the files to the resources field of the customization file, and you'll see, you can just look at it and you'll see if there's stuff in there that you don't want to include. So technically, this is a little bit complicated. You can add the globbing, but you also have to somehow, you have to be aware of the fact that you may be introducing errors, or we have to somehow anticipate every file that a plugin or a KRM function will try to open, and then somehow exclude that from the resources list. So does anybody want to talk about that? Does anybody want to advocate for this feature?
I don't want to advocate for it. We have kind of this use case in a way where we have a determinate number of combinations, and once we know what those combinations are, we generate our resources list. Kustomize is great about being a tool that we can feed information in, and then it operates as a function on that data. So I'd feel kind of weird if there was a feature like this where something indeterminate could happen.
It look like this. You'd see like a wildcard appearing in the resources list.
Yeah, if the feature is made available, somebody in my organization will use it, and I would probably ban it. I'd probably add some linters to prevent this from happening.
Right, that Bailey brings up the point that, well, we could go ahead and throw it in, and then people don't have to use it, and those people who do want to use it could use it. Right. Oh, let me give you another alternative. Related to this is another formulation of sort of the same thing, which is the idea that if you drop the resources field, that's taken as a signal to sort of take everything in sight. And if you do that, then you also have to introduce some kind of an exclusions field, so you can specify the things you don't want to include in the resources list. I don't know. I'm not super enthusiastic about this feature for the same thing. I would probably ban it as well if it was up to me. But I don't know.
Like, how would you do this with scripting? Like, because I could, like, it seems like it would be reasonable to say, like, if there was a, like, oh, if you just pipe this to this, then like don't worry about it, right, or something like that. In this case, I guess you'd have to do it by using the customized commands to edit. Like you do, like, let's say you do like find with -exec, right, is kind of like a standard way of doing this sort of stuff. Is there anything we could do in that realm?
Well, yeah. So the place where we talk about eschewing this, that doc says, you know, try to use out of band, use customize, edit, add resources, which takes a glob, which does take a glob. So at that point, you could put that in a script, say, and you'd get pretty much the same behavior. So if you did have, in that case, a patch file that you didn't want to have included in your resources list, if that was in your directory and your script ran this add to modify the customization.yaml file, you'd see the wrong output. You'd get the wrong output at that point. We had always imagined that this edit thing would be a human-driven interactive thing, not something running in the background. Because then you'd be making the explicit choice as to what you wanted to do with your customization file. And then, you know, when GitOps runs, it's just using the customization file as is. It's not editing on the fly, because if it's editing on the fly, then you're not really doing declarative work. Does that answer your question? I don't think I answered your question. You were talking about exec.
Yes, and like I mean, I don't think it directly answers it, but I'm also not sure like there's a great answer for the question. I think like the way like and not because I think maybe we don't want to do this, right? So as I thought about the way I think you'd do this, right, is like potentially in Unix you do like customize takes an additional list of files as arguments, right? In like in an imperative Unix system, right? And then so you do like find whatever thing you wanted, pipe that to xargs, and then customize build, right? And then that would be your like one line of, okay, you want to like if you want to customize whatever it happens to be in a particular directory someplace. The reason like I don't love that is it means that like it moves away from the declarative, like whatever I've checked in is there, and that would like that. I think it's a worse solution for the user than having it just take a directory or a glob or something like that, because it makes it more opaque to what's going on.
Right. So I agree with you. And then we got to deal with the problem. If the goal is to make it simple, the problem then is what do we do about the files that are just meant as arguments to things like transformers, you know, that aren't actually in the resources list, because the glob will catch those. We'd have to impose new rules saying like such files have to be in a subdirectory, and then the globbing, you know, it'll get more complicated. Yeah. There'll be more things, right?
I think that was, like that's where like we've in the past we've looked at like annotations to say like ignored and that sort of thing. Like I know we have an annotation that was going to be used to like have apply ignore.
So like in a patch file or a file that would be meant as input to a transformer or a KRM function, one would be obligated to put in a
annotation saying
yeah.
So yeah, but you're right. It starts to get weird, like, and then it becomes more and more questionable whether the value is there.
Yeah, the people lobbying for the future talk about making it easier, and I feel like it's only easy in certain use cases, the use cases that don't have other files around that aren't meant.
So maybe this does customize edit take a list? edit resources?
It certainly takes globbing. I don't know if it takes a list. If it doesn't take a list, that certainly would be something to be easy to add.
Because it like maybe the right case here is just saying like, okay, like as part of your makefile, run find exec or find xargs, customize, edit, set resources or something, and then as long as that does the right thing, seems reasonable.
I think
See, and
that
at
makes a
that
lot of
point,
sense
then
to me.
that they would notice at that point that the that patch file would get
Showing
added.
up.
Yeah, it would show up right away. It'd be an early failure or obvious failure, I guess I should say.
Bailey, did you
Okay.
say something?
+1 for expanding customize edit to accept lists. We actually use customize edit for a lot of our stuff. I mean, it's kind of through a script, but we are using annotations on the incoming resources to decide what we do. Kind of like basically what you proposed, but I think that is something that belongs in my tooling and not in customize proper.
I think it probably accepts a list because it accepts a glob, but we'll make sure.
Yeah, so then like that, the action item here may be update the customized doc or update the like doc site that in the FAQ, right? To have a how do I do globs, right, section where we paste in the one line thing that you add to your makefile.
Okay, great. Back to the issues. Okay, so this was very related to this, was this notion of adding an exclusions field, which would be a companion to some kind of globbing. So we don't need to discuss that unless let's just be rehashing the same thing. It's another way to do this. Okay, this guy here is, I wrote this, but it's from input from other folks. It's this notion of having, right now, customizations have patches that allow inline patches. So you can specify a patch in two different ways, as a file path or as an inline YAML that is your patch. And it just sits in a customization file. So this issue is about adding the ability to specify configuration for KRM functions and plugins inline in the customization file instead of having them off in another file. So it's kind of a straightforward convenience thing.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, it's one of, like you said, it's not something where like a user couldn't use the system without that. I think it will demo more nicely. Like some of these things I think of just saying like, it's easier to show examples when you can inline like several pieces of related content into a single file rather than like showing an example where you have to open 3 or 4 different files to show what's going on.
Yep, definitely. Okay, this guy, multiple static Kubernetes open API schema. So the open API schema, there's a person at Google who's been an engineer at Google who's been doing some great work with integrating more powerful features related to open API so that we can manage custom resources better and also manage different versions of the, not that they're frequently happening, but different versions of the Kubernetes resource types. So this particular issue is about, right now, some more history. Right now, there's only one version of the open API types as provided by Kubernetes that's compiled into the KYAML libraries, and that's like 117 or something. I think, Phil, you did that. This would be a way to specify in your customization file which version you wanted to use and allow multiple versions to be available. And this is sort of a segue into a more complicated thing where you could specify an actual file path to a JSON, a swagger.json file that described more types for your own custom use.
Would that be part of the customization file, or would that be on the command
Yeah.
line?
Yeah, it'd be part of the customization file. So in your customization, yeah, here we go. In the customization file, you'd actually specify an open API field, which would be a new thing. And then underneath open API would be either version, which would specify some hard-coded version provided by Kubernetes, the Kubernetes type, or I think a later issue allows paths to be specified here to swagger.json files, basically.
Yeah, probably a list. That makes sense.
Yep.
So we don't. Sorry.
What do we do? What do we do if there's a different, if, like the version is specified, different versions are specified by different customization files?
Yeah.
Templated.
You mean like in an overlay stack?
Yeah, yeah.
That would be. I think the way you'd have to do that is like in the let's say you got a base it's at 117. You complete the processing for that in the base, and then that comes spewing out as just a bunch of resources. And then in the overlay, if that's asking for 118, say, all of those resources are now interpreted underneath that set of typing rules. So it will work. It will work. It will do the right. I think it'll do the right thing. But somebody who's doing that would be. That might introduce some weird errors. I imagine you'd be downloading, say, a base that you didn't control or that somebody else controlled, and you were trying to use a more modern version. I don't know. It'd be all in the error messages for that one.
Sean, I interrupted you. What were you saying?
Oh, I just thought my microphone wasn't working. Sorry. Just a quick question. We don't actually contact an API server. We're not going to use the kube config to contact an API server to.
No, sir. There is a no. There's now there's a make target. There's a target in the make file to go contact a server and grab the Swagger, the open API information. So that would get compiled in. This is all about compiling in. So there's the customizes does not have any built-in talk to the server stuff.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Hey, Jeff, just a quick note. I was complaining yesterday about working with Gnostic, which is the open API proto library we use inside Kubernetes. And Maciej said that there's an effort to try to move to Go open API or some other libraries. So I don't know if you know anything about that, but I want you to be aware of it.
Okay, thanks.
From Gnostic?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this uses Go Open API. I think the YAML libraries use Go Open API. Yeah. They use the native or whatever the most authoritative Go implementation of the Open API schema is.
Okay. Yeah, Maciej said he spoke with STTTS. He did some changes. We copied the Go Open API bits that we need internally. I'm planning to switch kube control to use those instead of the current ones. He's like, won't happen in 120 though. So.
Yeah, this doesn't use the kube control Open API. It's a different thing.
Bailey, by the way, if you want to talk about anything, go ahead and chime in at any moment. Like if you have something in the back of your mind that's been bothering you or that you'd like to bring up in the meeting, that'd be terrific. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going through this list for a few more minutes.
Sure. I guess I did have one topic where I've been working on a plugin to, so we use customized bases everywhere, and our services, each service basically consumes a centralized base, defining like what a Go microservice is. And one of the things that is getting difficult managing that is upgrading versions of that base. And so we've been pinning it with semantic versions on our Git tags. And I wasn't sure if the community would be interested in a function for running Go Getter, computing the semantic version, and if like you have customize and edit update, and that'll update the ref that you're currently consuming. That's right now my approach for solving it internal to us. I haven't open sourced that or anything. there's any guidance you wanted to provide on that, I can create an issue with basically that proposal.
Okay, so this would be like modifying the edit command to be more aware of the structure of the base target, right, in the resources list.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great. I've heard this from other people too. Say
Yeah.
you just want it like an image tag. You just want to modify the version. Yeah, yeah, that'd be great. Please file that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, mangled manifest. This came in a couple days ago. I haven't looked at this yet. Mangled manifest with n from value from field ref, field path. Oh, secret generators. And reference to something that I don't know what that is. Okay, so Donnie, it looks like Donnie already commented here asking for a set of files for reproduce. I think that's a pretty good idea. All right, let's go back. Please provide a way to list of built-in plugins. Should probably talk about plugins. So we have 3 different kinds of ways to extend customize at this point. We have Go plugins, which are going to be deprecated in the before we reintegrate with kubectl. Then there's just exec plugins, which are what they sound like. Customize shells out to a program that reads all your resources, performs some sort of modification to it, and the output of that is absorbed back into the customized processing stream. And then there's KRM functions, which are execs, but then containerized and following a slightly different way of accepting input and providing output. So I don't know that we would ever provide a way to list built-in plugins. Because that's more of a documentation thing. So I'll comment on that in the issue later. Okay, JSON schema does not match documentation. That's help wanted. That's a doc bug. Can't install older versions of Customize because GitHub limit on releases API. What's that? Oh, right. So it looks like somebody's trying to get older versions using the bash script that we offer, install customize.sh, which I think takes an argument and by default gets the latest one. So you can always go and download these things from the releases page by hand. So yeah, I'll comment on that later.
What does the script do that Go doesn't at this point? Because they could just do go get whatever and then say at whatever, right? And then it would do the right thing.
Go get still, yeah, go installed. I don't think it accepts the at, but go get should. It just requires go to be installed, and so the purpose of the install customize script is sort of to avoid that problem.
I guess it has the version baked in. Like you can say customize version, and with go get maybe you can't or something like that.
Yeah, it looks like it's attempting to do some kind of version parsing here. Yeah. This might also be mitigated by providing, we're trying, Donnie's done some work to make sure that we provide a container for every release, an image in a container in GCR, Google Container Registry. So somebody could get it that way as well, depending on how they use it.
Can I ask a quick question, Jeff?
Yeah.
So, so I know that separately we're trying to get the latest version of Customized into kube control. Is there anything in our list here where we need to prioritize any actions or prerequisites in order to get that done?
That is already
It's already
prioritized. So
tracked?
in the,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So Brian Paisley, I just merged his PR this morning. Brian Pursley. He did a bunch of implementations of that we need for switching away from API machinery to KYAML. The plan for that is not as, you got to follow issues to find this plan, but here's the plan. And there's two issues that have to be done. Implement this thing called WNode, which is a wrapper around nodes. And then the other issue is implement the WNode factory, which is what it sounds like. That thing is at the top of my plate. And I now have been sort of freed up at work to dedicate myself to that. So those two things get done. And then what we do is we flip this flag to true. Right now it's false. We flip it to true. We ship customize with that thing on, assuming this doesn't trigger a some kind of bug storm. Then we make it true by default, and then we're free to go and delete a bunch of code. And once those dependencies are deleted, then reintegrating with kubectl is going to be just a matter of about 20 lines of code and some new import statements. Okay, so this straightforward bug, upload the documentation website. That's Donnie wants to. I think we need to get a better understanding of how to ship the documentation. And I know Phil, you've been doing that with what's the gentleman's name that's working on the docs? Can't think of it right now. But Siam, that's right. I think we would probably like to have a better idea of how that works for people that would like to update the documents, so we can get more help-wanted kind of tags assigned to some of these bugs, because lots of people want to help with documentation.
I was just about to enter the one for the not mentioning the GCR.io images. I was pretty excited to hear about that. I'll definitely be using them. So I guess we can skip over that one since it's not done yet.
Okay, that's a question. Convert all built-in customized plugins to KRM functions. It's sort of a packaging thing. Yeah, so part of the API, the underlying libraries for Customize are in the V0 series right now. So to responsibly integrate them into kubectl, we want to release 1.0 and take that opportunity to clean up the API, make it smaller, maybe less packages in the overall module. And not today, I don't want to discuss this today, but decide once and for all what the heck to do about vars, which is a feature that some people really hate and some people really like. Bailey, are you in the do you guys use vars?
We use vars, but not, I want to change to setters, and I think I can in almost all cases.
Right. So anyway, that's what that's about. It's about stabilizing. This isn't new features. This would be actually reducing the surface of the API before we integrate it, before we export the Go module. So slam it in at version 1, semver rules apply for kubectl. So I think that's about as far as I wanted to go today, unless anybody else would like to chime in with something.
Are you, is customized components, is that feature going to be kept?
Yes.
Going forward in V1?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
It looks like we are about to make a pretty big investment in that. For example, having a component for enabling TLS, and that would apply to all of our stuff.
Yeah, the only thing to be dropped for sure is Go plugins, because Go plugins never, the Go team just really didn't decide to continue working on that thing. The other thing would be possibly vars, or as Phil has said, we could just leave it the way it is and it does what it says on the tin. It does make the code more complicated, and we do get issues filed about it a bunch. There's an issue about performance in vars having been impacted by recent changes. I don't know. Certainly there's
which I think was our issue.
Oh yeah, yeah. So one of the things, because we're in the middle of this transition between API machinery parsing and KYAML parsing, there's a lot of double and quadruple parsing going on because of these various layers that are at play. That's killing performance, and that will go away once we get rid of the API machinery and delete that code path. So the kind of performance bugs, I'm not looking at them right now because of I know why it has bad performance, and I know when it was introduced, and I know how to get rid of most of it. So you use vars then, okay?
All over.
But you want to switch into setters, yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is there was a replacement transformer, which was this idea of specifying. What vars do is you're obligated to define where a value comes from, and then use vars in your resources to specify where it goes, where the data goes. So a replacement transformer would allow you to do both of those things in the context of a transformer configuration. You'd specify both where the data was coming from, like I say, a port number would come from some port field, and you also specify where it should go. So you'd no longer have to sprinkle var, $var things in your $var tags, if you will, in your resources. You would just specify it in the configuration for the replacement transformer. And as Phil has brought up many times, we can also, this is the way setters work with, annotations directly in the YAML.
Yeah, the main issue for me is that because we have hundreds of services that are consuming those bases I was talking about before, it means that var sprawl has kind of happened across everywhere, and so that tech debt mountain is just really growing a little too quick. So moving to setters is definitely something we want to do, but it's kind of a big ask. I think we will do it, and if you really hit home that it's vars that are impacting performance, that might help me make more of a case to get that done sooner rather than later.
I don't know that it's a performance issue as much as it's a it renders the YAML unusable. So yeah, it's the one thing that sort of breaks the spirit of like keeping the YAML usable at all times and editing it in the course of processing, I guess.
I think one of the bigger challenges with using setters right now is we're trying to change the name field. And I think that was the one thing that was kind of a roadblock there. So right now we have a var that's like service name, and that gets edited into just about all the name fields.
So I might be wrong, but I think somewhere in the backlog there is a, maybe it's only in my mind, but there is an issue so Kustomize uses GVKN group version kind name as a primary key for the resources. And the issue is to just replace that with something else, a unique UUID or a hash of the content or something like that, and then use that to track the resources. The primary key is used when you're identifying where you want a patch to be applied. So when Kustomize first reads everything in, it could convert all the patch targets into some sort of unique identifier and then allow the name field to be modified safely. And right now, the way the name field is modified in one way by adding prefixes and suffixes, but the way that's implemented is pretty gnarly. So yeah,
my first prototype used prefixes and suffixes, and people kind of railed against it. It was, I guess, too many words for them. I'm not sure. It was my consumers that kind of pushed us back into vars there.
Though, so you were using vars to modify the name, or?
Exactly.
Oh.
That's the main place. So maybe I can pick up that issue and see if I can. If we whittle that down, then that'll make it easier for me to move off of ours in the future.
Okay, great. Well, Eddie, I can hand it back to you, I guess. Is there anybody else wants to speak up?
Thanks, Jeff.
Or Sean, thank you.
Yeah, this was great. I'm glad we got through some of your issues. We could consider doing this more often if it would be useful. Right now, we just do it once a month. All right, I'll share. So we have a couple in kube control that we could start with. Okay, a couple pressing ones since we have Sean here. I dug into this one yesterday, Sean. Where'd it go? It was an older one. Which it was the CRD one. This one. So this was additional printer columns for CRDs don't work. This is number 517. So it took me a while to track this down because I hadn't touched this part of the code base before. And so I've actually nailed it down to the API server, where when the table printer was implemented, a decision was made to only support one item. And so I don't know if this was an oversight or we don't want to add support to it, but this is exactly where that issue is coming from, is we only grab the one out of the array.
Yeah, I think this is an issue. Do you want to just assign it to me? I'm familiar with that table converter stuff.
Okay, yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it took a while to narrow down, but we got there.
Yeah, thanks for looking into that. It's actually, that type of searching I've found to be pretty useful for, being able to figure stuff out that I didn't know before, and generally get more information or get a better context on the code base.
Yeah, for sure.
So hopefully it wasn't too much of a waste of your time. Hopefully it was helpful.
No, I learned a lot. It's all good. Okay, this one, I was pinging Chris about this. I think we need to handle this soon. So there's a kubectl crew plugin right now called debug, and we're promoting the alpha debug command to top level, I believe. And so we need to handle this
before it gets before it gets promoted. That's when the collision will happen, right? It's not right now.
Right. I think Verb is targeting for 120 though.
Yeah, so Verb is actually the guy who owns the debug plugin. So, hopefully he would be able to manage that, or at least he'd be in the best position to manage that collision, since he's in charge of both of them.
Okay, I slacked it to him, so we'll see what he says.
Okay.
Yeah, this will also be an issue for other plugins too, outside of Crew potentially. Or
should we assign him?
Yeah, I think that's fair to do.
Or just ask him what his plan was. Maybe he has this documented somewhere, what his plan was for the for promoting to the debug command.
Next one, this one here. Install kubectl via winget, which is now the official package manager for Windows. We don't own any of the actual installation methods outside of the binary, right?
Yeah, that might be beyond our scope. And just for context, our testing regimen for anything other than Linux is actually woefully inadequate. And yeah, I mean, not that we could do anything here, but to be honest, we're not doing nearly enough considering how many people use kubectl in Windows.
Okay, I dropped I think SIG Windows, so I'll see if anyone responds there. Okay, it honestly, it looks super easy. It's just like a straightforward YAML manifest. So I'm happy to add it. I want to make sure that we have a separation, that like we're not going to own and update it.
Yeah, that does sound beyond our purview.
Yeah. Okay. Sally's not on the call. Sally's been looking at this one. So we can bump that for now. Number 964, Mache opened this. Okay, so I'll just accept this. Did anyone have issues that they want to look at? We can make sure we get to them. Okay, this is 972. So this user wants to have a silent flag to silence errors from doing a kubectl create namespace.
So usually for the create and run, I think our position has been we're not doing a lot of development in there anymore, except to try to deprecate and move people to apply.
Yeah. I also asked their use case because it seems counterproductive to silence the errors. You should be using a manifest or an apply, because imperative versus declarative. Okay, so I'll reply to it. I'll say I just wanted to get another opinion before we closed it. $969. Local subject access reviews doesn't appear when listing API resources.
I'll be honest, I've never heard of a local subject access review.
I have
as a type. Is that a CRD? What group is it under? It's under authorization. Is this an, oh no. I've never heard of that type. So that authorization.khs.io is part of the API resource list kind, or a group for that kind, I think.
Okay.
And then self-subject access reviews, subject access. There may be new RBAC stuff that I haven't heard of. But if you look at the, so if you look at the versioning there, the server version is 17 and the client version. So first of all, it's out of, there's version skew there, but the server version is back to version 17. And if you assign this to me, I'll look up what this, because I want to know now what this local subject access review thing is. And if you put triage accepted, my guess is that even if there is a new type, it just got added in a newer. So I see Justin's on here. Have you heard of that type?
Yeah, there's sort of fake types or dummy types that are used to do validation of authorization. I wanted to debate between authentication and authorization, but authorization. So they are used internally. They're a bit like the CR certificate, CSRs, right? Which are like sort of internal type. Although CSRs are more real. This is a very fake one.
Certificate signing.
Certificate. Can't remember.
Signing request.
Yes, thank you. But yeah, these are even more like ephemeral types, is my understanding. So
we don't expose them, or we do.
Well, you wouldn't want to. You normally wouldn't apply them, for example. But I don't know why you would hide them from these things. Okay, but it might be a deliberate decision to do so.
Okay, I'll look into this. I want to know more about this.
Well, thank you, Sean and Justin. Okay, so get Logder. We talked about this one. Yes, Brian and Doug looked at it. So we advertise that log file and Logder exist, but it does not log out. And then Brian discovered you have to specify log to standard error. Is that intentional? Or that might seem like an oversight where we're not writing standard error to the log file and we're writing standard out and there's nothing on standard out?
I remember running into this a while back. At the very least, it's poorly documented.
There's also another flag called, if I recall correctly, also log to standard error or something like that. And I think that's the one that is the more normal one. But if I recall correctly, basically the default klog configuration logs only to standard error. And so there is a log file, but it doesn't get activated. If I were to write to a log file, that is the path I would write to. But by default, I'm writing to standard error only. And you can say, don't log to standard error or also log to standard error, which is another perhaps misname for log to standard file as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the original default was files, which is why the flags all are a little backwards.
So can we add to this? There's also the log to standard error flag, just so we don't lose that context, that knowledge nugget that Justin just dropped on.
You said also log to?
Also log to standard error. Yes, I believe so.
I mean, I'll do it here real quick. Yes, it is one word, all lowercase. Okay, anyone want to take a look at this and dive in?
Go ahead and assign it to me, Eddie. I do some klog stuff.
It might be the helpful thing to do is simply to give a prompt in those help messages to suggest also log to standard error. I imagine changing the default behavior will be unpopular.
Yeah. My take is that it's just going to be better documentation on how to do this correctly, because it's not easy to figure it out.
I captured that in here. Cool. How much time we got? 8 minutes. Support for setting resource version in kubectl get. Support for a resource version equals X flag.
Yeah, I'm guessing that this is going to be, so this is definitely within the purview of the API machinery in the API server. They're the ones who are setting the resource version. And yeah, I would imagine that this would, this might mess up. So the resource version is what's used for optimistic locking. Isn't that correct, Justin? And so, yeah, the ways that this could go wrong seem really high, and that it's going on elsewhere and doing it on the client maybe I'm wrong, but that just seems really fraught with error.
There was an issue that I closed recently that was very similar. Confusion. There we go. Something like this. Kube control reports different API version than what was deployed. And it was the compatibility between like 116 changes or something.
So this is, this has been a problem forever, but I shouldn't say it's a problem. It's actually the way that things are and always will be. There's going to be a default version for every single API server that if you give the short name or you ask for a pod, it's going to try to figure out which particular group version that is. It's going to use a default version. This is generally a problem with things that went from extensions v1 beta 1 into apps v1. But if you want to request a specific group version kind, you have to specify that group version kind, which is the answer down at the bottom there.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the API server to give you that version that it converts from the internal version, which is different than the storage version.
Mache weighed in here. So is that what we recommend then, to just, would that be a sufficient replacement to just do the whole GVK out?
I'm reading support for regional version. Today, Git only supporting listing with resource version, which will be slow for user. So they want to use resource version for some kind of filtering or ordering.
Does it not do that if you specify? Okay, let's keep this one open and I'll ping Mache to follow up. Because it sounds like they're confusing something with this chunk size, which there's actually another issue that is very similar to this. This one.
For the table stuff, which...
No, this is different. This is Kube control uses far more memory than expected. Where it uses 14 gigs to query.
Yeah, okay, so look at what they wrote. They said all namespaces get pods everywhere in your cluster.
Right.
Which, seems like a bad idea anyway.
So I'm pretty sure that we had this one open, which is what I pointed to, which is what Antoine followed. And then we were talking about not doing the chunking and streaming. So I'm pretty sure this is the same thing. It's just we didn't talk about memory in this thread. If feel like these are all the same issue.
Should we put a reference to that other one in this then?
Yeah, I'll put that together after. How much time we got? 3 minutes. Let's see. Option for kube control to render messaging using structured output.
So
Oh, I see. So they want to put this out into like log, whatever the log format is, right?
So is there a JSON file that -o, you can specify a template file so that you could spit it out into the format you want? If you, so I haven't used the JSON template -o.
I guess so. The question there is, can you target errors with the template, right?
Okay. Okay. Deliver out a structured. Okay. Oh, okay. So the -o is affecting the standard out, but not standard error.
Yes. Which that seems like a much bigger change.
I might suggest it sounds like there are two commands that they actually particularly care about. We could presumably have a different klog backend that does output JSON, which could somehow be opted into, presumably using some complicated flag. And then it sounds like there's a handful of outputs. I'm guessing like kubectl port forward, they want the port is probably one of the things they really want. And then like the errors, I don't know whether the errors are K-logged or whether they are stat printed, but it doesn't sound like they want it everywhere. It sounds like they want it just in a couple of places. So it might not be as bad as it looks.
Right. They want to, the errors are what they're trying to parse out. Oh yeah, I see what they're doing. They just have hard-coded error message that they're matching on. I guess this is probably a bigger one, right, to bring up at a SIG meeting.
Yeah, can we add that to the
Yeah.
to the agenda for next time?
Yeah, I'll add that on there. Yeah, and we'll probably have to address this statement right here, where kube control is increasingly being used as an implementation tool. Is that what we want it to be? Do we want to support that?
So there's some underlying philosophies that we've had around for a long time that describe whether or not we allow people to, or whether or not we honor whether or not it's an API, what things look like in what format that they come back, and mostly we tell them this isn't an API and it can change the formatted output, and so if you guys are relying on that, that's your problem. I have another meeting.
Yeah, we're over time anyways.
So really appreciate, again, the setup and the organization and moderating, Eddie.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the help.
And good to see you, Justin. Thanks for showing.
Good to see you. This is fun. Thanks.
Yep.